All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Even Tacos Fall Apart. I am here with another Mental Health Monday. Very excited for tonight's conversation. And we are right on time, so I'm excited for that also. Sometimes I was pretty late pushing that little button last week, but now we're right on it. So I am joined today by Chris Abdey, and we are going to talk about procrastination and productivity, which I think is a great conversation. We've been having kind of some pre-conversations, and I'm just like, this is gonna be a good thing to roll through for sure. So Chris, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day and joining us here. I appreciate you stopping in.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, for those of you who are just joining right now, we have a question queue open for Chris. If you have any questions related to procrastination or productivity, feel free to pop those into the chat and we will get them answered tonight while we are here. And I will tell you a little bit about Chris. Chris is a procrastination coach and mental wellness advocate specializing in addiction, burnout, and stress management. And if you are interested in connecting with Chris anywhere, I've got website, LinkedIn, also an email address that you are welcome to reach out to him on. Feel free to get in there and go engage with any of his content. And you know what I always say is that engagement is really key. So if you go to his LinkedIn, make sure you like a couple posts, leave a comment on a post or two. That's what really helps. And then in addition to that, Chris is offering a free productivity session for listeners of Even Tacos Fall Apart. So if you're interested in that, there will be a link down in the description. And if you are here live, you can go to the Discord. Let me post a link to our Discord as well. And I've got that posted there. So feel free to take advantage of that. And let me get that link posted. And I think that that is a great offering. I appreciate you offering that to our audience. I hope that a lot of people take advantage of that for sure. So before we dive into the topic, a little bit of kind of background here. What inspired you to become a procrastination coach and a productivity expert?
Well, really, what inspired me is that for my entire professional career, I'd always been helping others. Mainly around productivity systems, burnout, optimizing systems. Getting customer service teams to get their handle times on time. I ran the gauntlet through some call centers. Worked my way up into project management, business development, and well, that was quite a few years ago now, but even in the financial risk and any money laundering and fraud sectors like that as well. And really, I really honed in on procrastination because one of my big goals was to bring my family back to Canada from where we were overseas. We were in Nicaragua for 17 years, and so doing that, I was pulling 80-hour weeks. I was, never around. And we got to Canada, and I realized that, I didn't know my daughter, and I had an estranged wife to deal with. So I guess in a way you could say I've been procrastinating on doing that. But anyway, the bottom line is I needed to do something that would allow me to have more time, and I was going to get involved in another project that would have just taken me, out 80 hours a week again, and that wasn't going to happen. So, well, and it also fell through for some other reasons. But out of that, somebody told me, well, you've already been doing this. Why don't you just go get some certifications? Update it, and then just do coaching. It's like, well, what would I coach in? It's like, well, stress, burnout, procrastination. I'm like, oh, procrastination. Like, I know that. So that's really how I got into it. Was a lot of my own experiences, and also just wanting to focus on helping people as well.
Yeah. You said y'all were in Nicaragua for 17 years. What took you to Nicaragua for 17 years?
The short answer is that I went back to help my family. They wanted to do a tourism business there. It wasn't didn't pan out for different reasons, but originally Stuart Little. I'm dating myself a little. So Stuart Little, when it first came out, we went to go see the movie in the theater. Back when theaters were still a thing, and my dad filled out one of those little ballots that said, where are you going after the movie? They looked really scammy, the big box next to
Mm-hmm.
the theater door or whatever. and they want a trip to Costa Rica. They loved it so much that they packed us all up and moved us down there. And so I was in Costa Rica from 2000, just after September. We actually moved down just after September 11th. That was interesting.
Wow.
but but then after that, when I graduated high school, I went back to Canada, and then went down to Nicaragua again, to help them with their business endeavors there.
Oh, that's neat. I've got a friend who just moved her whole family to Costa Rica. She was just like, "Yep, we went to Costa Rica. Same exact story. We went to Costa Rica. We fell in love, and now we're moving." And they bought a like a little 8 house compound. They're fixing it up and doing the whole vacation rental kind of thing down there, and they put their kids into a school down there and everything. I was just amazed that she did that. It was really cool, and she posts all kinds of stuff on Facebook about how wonderful it is and how much fun they're having and all this stuff. And I'm a little jealous. Seems like it would be really neat. What made you want to come back to Canada?
Well, my daughter's getting older, and unfortunately, won't go too much into it. But if you look up Nicaragua in 2018, that is when some stuff happened, and
Mm,
we just decided that it was probably better to not raise a daughter in that
yeah,
environment.
yeah, fair, totally fair. Yeah. Do you have a true crime story that fascinates you?
I do. I went back and forth on this before the show. I actually looked it up, and the one that fascinates me the most isn't really considered true crime. I mean, I think it is just an abhorrent crime, but that's just me. And it was just everything that went on with Hitler and his rise to power. And the reason that I am so interested in that is that throughout history we have these patterns that repeat themselves, and it just amazes me how this you know raving painter who started as a nobody could climb and rise to power like that, and just the different sociological and psychological components that went into that. How he managed to unite. um, he was a genius, evil genius, but he was a genius.
Mm-hmm.
He managed to unite people in a way that had not been seen prior to that. And so, yeah, I mean, horrible, horrible, circumstances, and what he did was horrible. But I mean, I'm just interested, and many people actually, if you look online, and you look through different pictures and things, you can see that there are quite a few leaders that are reading Mein Kampf and, and some of these other books, and it just interesting in that how that replays out on a global scale sometimes.
Yeah. I don't think there's a problem with reading manifestos and that kind of thing. It's a question of what stories you take out of it and what lessons you take out of it. And I think a lot of the folks who are doing that sort of thing right now, unfortunately, are taking the wrong lessons out of it and not applying the right things. Most definitely. But we did chat about this a little bit ahead of time, but I totally think that's true crime. And you brought up 9/11 also. That's like saying Osama bin Laden didn't commit crimes because he wasn't on the planes doing the hijacking. Like, yeah, yes, yes, absolutely. That was criminal activity going on. I truly, I understand how people might say it's not true crime, but I absolutely think that things like takeovers and genocide is absolutely a crime, whether you're the one actively doing it or you're the one causing it to happen. I think that's a problem, and it counts 100% to me. So our topic tonight is procrastination and productivity. I want to talk a little bit about procrastination just in general. How common is procrastination, and are there any just misconceptions people might have about procrastination as a topic?
Oh no, for sure. And I'm glad you brought up the misconceptions, because one of the things about procrastination is that I've run into people, and I've run into case studies where people, they claim to never have procrastinated ever. And I'm not going to go out and say that it's not factual. But the reality is that we live in a society that is just predetermined, almost preordained, that we're going to run into procrastination at one point or another, because we live in a society that's distracted. Wow, is that ever right now? We live in a society that puts value on, validation. They put a lot of value in validation. They put a
Mm-hmm.
lot of your worth into validation. How much money you have, what kind of job you have, what you can say, what you can't say. I mean, how many times? I mean, I know maybe not in your case specifically, but how many times do we go on a podcast, or do we have to, consider our words, or even consider if we're going to go on a podcast, because we
Mm-hmm.
don't know how something is going to look or how something is going to be twisted. So again, procrastination is way more common than many people think, but there's such a huge stigma on it because we put other labels on it. We say, "Oh, you're lazy. Oh, you're not committed. Oh, you are, you are not intelligent enough for whatever." There's just so many things there, and the biggest misconception is that you're not lazy. You're not broken. If you are suffering from procrastination, it's that it's almost like your brain is a computer. So you've got this programming, and the brain's programming is fine. It might not be overly beneficial to you. Just like, oh, I don't know, dating myself again. Windows 3.1 with that stupid little paperclip, or
Yeah.
like it
Clippy.
didn't really
Clippy was
didn't
his
really serve a
name.
purpose.
Oh, come on. He was
Didn't
there
really
for
serve a
moral
purpose.
support.
There were lots of memes of him hanging himself. I mean, like,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think those would be the biggest misconceptions. One, that it definitely is way more prevalent than people even realize, and two, you're not broken and you're not lazy.
Yeah. I definitely think it's easy. So our society, not only is it like trying to get you to procrastinate with all of these different distractions, but also it's a very judgmental time right now where it's like you need to be constantly on. You need to have 12 side hustles. If you're not working every minute of every day, then you're wasting your time. And I think it's really difficult to say, like, oh, I'm not procrastinating because I'm working on these 12 things. Well, it's like, well, you could still be procrastinating something, even if you are being productive over here on something else. But yeah, it's society as a whole is not set up to help you not procrastinate. And it's not set up to help you not be to help you be productive either, because there are so many things that could benefit if you're not productive, and different platforms and everything benefit from you being not productive. And so yeah, it's quite a difficult thing. Now, you brought up the lazy piece, and I want to get into that a little bit also, because a lot of the time, like I said, if you're needing to always constantly be on and you're being a little bit judged for, oh, if you're taking a break, then you're not being productive. How do you tell the difference between my body, my mind needs rest, and I am procrastinating? Is there an easy, like, here's how you know whether this is procrastination or this is close, maybe it gets into a little bit of burnout also, but this is like, I need rest? Is there an easy way to tell between those two?
There definitely is. It's a little bit difficult to gauge it sometimes, but if you've got something that you want to do, or well, that you need to get done, and you are constantly feeling like tired, like if you just think about it and you start to feel like immediately tired, and you don't have any other reason for it, then that's likely procrastination, because it's a defense mechanism. I'm sure that we've all experienced this in school, with certain subjects. You feel like, oh, and then you sit down and they start talking, and it's all of a sudden, why do I feel so tired? Like, what happened? Did my sugar crash? Like what am I doing? Did I not get enough lunch? What? And if you move those around, so we can talk about that in a little bit too. If you move those um, tasks around to when you will be most energetically available and mentally alert, and you still, when as soon as it comes up, you feel that tiredness seeping in, then it's definitely not something about you needing rest. It's something that you are specifically resisting in that particular task.
Interesting. And that's just kind of your brain like saying I'm not interested, go do something else.
It's so weird and counterintuitive, that, right? Because everything that happens in the brain right now, everything up until all those nasty side effects like anxiety or other things are actually designed to keep you safe. So, and I'm still trying to find, like, honestly, I'm still trying to find, because I find it fascinating. I'm still trying to find what evolutionary kind of need that fulfilled when you all of a sudden, like, I get the adrenaline rush and you're gonna run away from your predators, but like, why would you immediately feel tired when someone's admitted to something like that? Like, it
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. The only thing I can think of is that maybe again, we were running naked and afraid through the trees 10,000 years ago, in that we only focus on the negative because negative things killed us. But then if we looked at a big mountain range and we saw that it was really far away, then the brain would say, "Oh, it's too far away." And knowing that we didn't have tools to use, maybe it thought that maybe it was smart enough to know we were going to die because we wouldn't have
Mm.
water or food if we went out in the desert for 40 days, right? So it could be related to something like that, but it's always been fascinating for me.
Yeah, that's an interesting just like what drove us to get to this point. That's an interesting question. I definitely don't know, but if you find an answer, a scientific answer at some point, I would love just reach back out to me. I would love to talk about that too because it's interesting. Winter is here and has a great question. Winter, I don't know if we'll be able to address this all the way, but I will go ahead and ask it. What would you do if you're worried about your brother hurting himself on a dirt bike and passing out and you've been anxious ever since? So I definitely will kick that off and say like that's something to talk about with your own therapist and try to work through whatever that specific personal thing is that you're facing. And I don't know if there's anything related to productivity or procrastination there, but Chris, anything to add to that?
I don't know, definitely just communication for one thing. Um, the only thing that I'll say, I mean, if you're worried about another family member, talk to them about it. Um, it's coming from a place of love always, right? So definitely, have that open conversation with them. But again, if you are having an issue and you need to talk to somebody, then definitely, look for a therapist or, a coach in your area, and, definitely talk that out. But again, end of the day, everyone's on their own journey. As much as we, love to keep them safe all the time, they do need to make their own decisions, and we do need to respect that. Um, as well. So again, just open up the dialogue and just see where it goes. Because honest conversations, and again, this isn't a conversation where you're going to say, "Oh, you got to stop doing this." Just say, we care about you. We don't want you to get hurt. If we'd like it if you didn't do this, but we understand if you still do it. But be careful and take the proper precautions, right?
Yeah. And if your brother is still like I don't know if he's in the hospital or what happened after whatever happened on the dirt bike, but if your brother's still injured, just make sure you're taking it easy while your brother is recovering. Also, make sure that you're taking care of yourself. And yeah, let me just add that it happened at 5 p.m. So he's actively in the hospital. Then anxiety. I am not a therapist. Like huge disclaimer, but in my opinion, anxiety is totally understandable right now. If this happened a matter of hours ago and your brother is actively in the hospital right now, anxiety is completely understandable. And if you need to, do increase self care tonight, or if you need to go be with your brother and you're able to do that, just think about what will best serve you in this moment and try to take a step towards that for sure. But yeah, if this just happened hours ago, I feel you. I know, and I'm sorry, and I hope your brother recovers quickly and fully. So, getting a little bit, we kind of touched on why does the brain do this? What are the psychological barriers that often lead to procrastination?
Mhm. Well, the big ones are, so you have to understand sort of the five stations. I call them the five stations. So we have the perfectionist, we have the worrier, we have the dreamer, we have the crisis maker, and then we have the defier. So the psychological barriers that often come up at the base level, the most common ones are fear. Fear of rejection, fear of what happens if you do it, fear of what happens if you don't do it, which is a weird one because if you don't do it, it doesn't get done. So you're stuck in that cycle of fear of what happens if you don't do it. Um, and then you've got boredom. So the dreamers, this happens too. So what happens is that we live in such an overstimulated world that sometimes we're so good at creating images in our head that gives us enough dopamine that we're okay with it. And then when we start actually looking at doing those things, like breaking them down into the steps, you're like, oh, grab a paintbrush, or you picture this great big mural. Let's take a mural. Picture this great big mural in your head, how it's going to look. You're going to go paint it. Feels great. You look at it, you visualize it, it's done. That dopamine gets released because your brain treats imagined things the same as it does real things, which is kind of interesting too. And what happens is you go to grab those brushes, and then you say, "Oh, but the wall's across town. Oh, wait, no. Then I gotta buy paint. What?" And then you're saying, "What? I gotta actually do this? No, I'm good with that dopamine that I just got a little while ago. I'm okay with that."
Yeah,
And yeah,
yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't realize that your brain will just treat the imagining of something the same as the completing of something. It doesn't there's no difference there.
no, there is not. It goes as far as your belief, and this is why video games are so satisfying to people who, specifically ADHD and people that love to have lists and things that they can do and check off. There is no difference between getting to level 55 in a video game and getting an A on a math test. They can even elicit both. Yeah, but I mean, both of those can even elicit the same stress responses when you're going to go take the test, or when you're fighting a final boss battle, or when you're literally out in the jungle and you've got a stick and you're trying to fight off a bear. I mean, the brain treats those situations almost exactly the same, which is really interesting.
Wow. I could definitely see the video game versus math test, but video game versus bear is a little bit mind-blowing to me.
Oh, it is. I mean, the same anxiety, and they did tests on this. Many different tests over many years. MIT did some. Berkeley's done some. There's tons of them if you go to PubMed. People who have literally had guns to their heads reported the same levels of anxiety, or same levels of like stress as people who were under the gun, figuratively, for like a math test, or some sort of test, right? And a lot of that goes to what you've been exposed to. So, and this is a good one because it really changed my view on babies. Uh, because I used to be one of those people that I used to go out to a restaurant or a car or whatever in an airplane, like, oh my God, there's a baby crying and it's going to be crying for the next 3 hours or whatever, right? But you have to understand that that's their frame of reference.
Yeah.
So a baby cries so much, and I didn't understand this. Like even with my own daughter, I didn't really understand this. I didn't understand, like it didn't fully sink in until probably about 5 years ago, which is really late, I think, but better late than never. Is that everything the baby has experienced up to that point is literally the worst thing that's ever happened to it in its life. So
Yes.
that's why it's crying.
Yeah. Yeah. The realizing that about babies. I mean, I go into a restaurant or whatever and I hear a baby crying, I'm like, I'm sorry for those parents having to deal with that. I'm glad it's not my baby. Cuz my youngest is 11, my oldest is 18. I'm like, I don't want to be in that baby's age anymore. But it definitely is like, and even middle school and high school age, even whenever you get to those ages, it's like, oh, a breakup is the end of the world. Well, it like I know that it's not the end of the world. They don't though. Like they don't. That is the worst thing. That is the worst thing that could happen to them in this moment. And it's like I've lived through a lot of shit and that's not it. But they don't know that. They have not experienced that even if they've seen someone else experience those kinds of things. And also, you can't tell your brain, "Oh, it could be way worse." Because in that moment it's just like this is worse. This is bad. This is not what I'm used to dealing with. So Yeah, having that frame of reference for a baby who came from a nice warm spot and now is in a cold spot, like that's it for them. Potentially life ending in their brain. So, does procrastination have different causes for different people? And if so, kind of how do you figure out what causes your procrastination?
See, that's a really interesting one. Again, we went over some of the big ones, like the fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of success, boredom. We've also got being uncomfortable. So a lot of the times you're procrastinating something is just because you don't want to you don't want to be uncomfortable. So really, the only way to dig into your procrastination and why you're procrastinating is to actually look at that task and see what it is about that specific task, or what part of that task is what's bothering you, because it's not the full task. And I had this discussion with this gentleman about mopping, and he's like, "No, no, no, I just hate mopping. I hate everything about it." Like, really? So walk through it. And and he said, "Oh, oh." He's like, "Okay." Like, literally, do you abhor grabbing the mop? Do you
Yeah.
abhor going and mopping the floor? There's always one thing. I can't use the mop story, but I'll use the laundry story. Another individual told me he had an individual with ADHD, and he said he couldn't do laundry, right? And so when he broke it down, putting the clothes in the hamper, that's fine. Picking them up, putting them in the washer, that's fine. Moving them from the washer to the dryer, that's fine. Taking them out of the dryer, yeah, that's fine. Folding them, putting them away, nope, nope, not gonna do it. So his big thing was he absolutely hated folding them and putting them away. It wasn't doing the laundry. Like, on the whole list, it was just putting the laundry away. So in his case, he negotiated with his wife and just said, "Hey, you know what? I'll do the laundry all day long, but you got to fold and put it away, and then we'll switch and do something else, right?" So just really finding that root cause is definitely important for when you are trying to figure out what your root cause is, because everybody's got one, or
Hmm.
even things that make you mad. Just knowing yourself and knowing your emotions and knowing where those are rooted can really give you a good idea of where you're falling, and why you're not doing what you need to do or want to do.
Is it if you figure out like the one thing? So with the laundry, it's putting it away, or whatever it winds up being. Is there a way to kind of pinpoint like, oh, this is a group of tasks, and this is the reason that I don't like doing them, or is it really individualized to what's the specific thing you're procrastinating and why are you procrastinating it, or is there a more general I procrastinate because, and maybe it does go back to kind of that fear of failure and those others that you mentioned, fear of success, all of those things. Maybe it kind of goes back to that. But if we're talking about, let's just take household chores, does that always come down to
Hmm.
there's one thing in the task that I don't like to do?
It's not always going to come down to one thing in the task. There's always one thing in the task that you don't like to do, but it is, like you said, you can actually generalize that into different things. So, for in my case, right? I don't like chores. I mean, I have no problem saying that. I don't like chores. And for me, it's different things, and I can identify which parts of the chores that I really don't like. So for, like, doing the dishes, I don't like. I don't actually like washing them. I don't like it. Or for when we're talking about like shoveling snow, I just don't like shoveling snow either. Or if we talk about laundry, like, I don't have a problem with laundry actually, but with those other things, I do have a problem with, right? So washing the dishes and shoveling the snow, and actually, even taking out the trash sometimes. But there is a common denominator there, and that is that I don't like to be cold. So if I do the dishes and then we're doing them in cold water, my hands get. I don't like that. I don't like my hands being cold. Shoveling the snow, well, obviously I don't want to get cold in the
Yeah.
snow. Taking the trash out is pretty much the same thing. So there's always the commonality there, and actually, there's that example of how you can get rid of procrastination that way too. So if you know that you have a predisposition to not liking it being cold, then making sure that you do things that would allow you to not have the excuse of possibly being cold. Because it's not even the fact that you're going to be cold. It's just that thought in the back of your head saying,
Mhm.
"Oh, I know you're going to be cold," even if it's not true. I mean, it gets down to, I'm in St. Catharines, Ontario, and it gets down to -20. But once it dips below 12 degrees, that's when I start saying it's cold. Like,
I'm
So
in Texas. It gets below 40, and I'm like, this is too cold for me.
yeah, in Fahrenheit, it was -9.
No, thank you. No, thank you. I definitely, so it's interesting, you just kind of figure out what it is about the task and a way to address it because I know in my chore life, which everyone has their own chore life, but I've not purposefully found things like that to fix. But like my thing with laundry is I hate folding socks because I there's always a sock that doesn't have a match. And so my solution for that was like, okay, I just don't fold my socks. They just go in a drawer. They just go in the sock drawer, matched, unmatched, whatever. I just don't care about them. And so I put on socks and if there's a matched pair then I wear them and if there's not then it's fine. But when I do laundry, I don't worry about the socks. And when I do dishes, I don't like touching the dirty dishes. So I have made sure that I have taught my children you rinse them off really well and then you put them in this other side of the sink so they're ready to be loaded into the dishwasher without food on them and everything. So like I've come up with these little things that I know they bother me and because I have gone ahead and just come up with a way to deal with it, but I never I guess put together, "Oh, I'm procrastinating laundry because of this. I'm procrastinating doing the dishes because of this. How do I?" So it's just kind of like I have gone through and customized my life, I suppose, in a way that works for me. And I guess I just assume that most people just kind of wind up doing that. Is that something that you see a lot? Is people come bringing these kinds of things to you and saying, "I just don't know. I just don't know what to do and how to kind of fix it."
So normally when people come to me, it's because they've got that one thing they really can't do. I mean, we've got these jokes, like the spice rack that somebody promised to build 12 years ago. Um, Actually, personally, I've got a chair sitting in a box. It was on sale, and I think it's been there since November 2020. What, from 2025? November 2023, I believe.
Oh no.
So So I mean, I can definitely relate and understand. But that's a procrastination thing just because of a priority thing. Because I don't obviously I don't need the chair or would have built it.
Yeah.
So just sitting there. But yes, I mean it is. Excuse me, I lost my train of thought there for a second. It is where there are certain things that you're procrastinating on, and there's always a reason, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think I answered your question.
Well, I mean, it just, and you brought up something else. I do want to revisit kind of the procrastination versus priorities thing. So I got to remember to go back to that. But we were talking about just do a lot of people come to you with these kinds of issues and say like I just don't know how to get over chores in particular, or is that a really common thread that people come to you with?
Um, Sometimes the really common thread out of all those bits of procrastination, at least lately, I've noticed comes down to a lot about self worth.
Mm,
So we're able to do things for others, but we're not able to do things for ourselves, and that I think really is one of the most prominent forms of procrastination we're seeing right now. And it's got very, very, very detrimental, horrible effects. Mainly seeing these in mothers who are, um, they've had their children, they're having their children leave the nest. It happens to fathers too, but um, definitely more prominent in mothers because guys we tend to be a little bit more selfish in that aspect, just because we're not generally primary caregivers. I mean, not all the time, but I think that definitely that's one of the biggest sort of commonalities I'm seeing today is that a big part of the procrastination is definitely coming down to um, almost like a self-worth, like, am I worth it? From the guy who couldn't paint his fence. He literally couldn't paint the fence. Called his buddies over, and he'd be able to paint it if his buddies were there, but he couldn't do it for himself. Um, if he was just painting the fence for himself, or he was just having a like even a birthday party, planning a birthday party for himself, for his kids he'd do it. For himself, he wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Or and it came down to that worth thing. So it can be that, but definitely that's one of the biggest, I guess, commonalities we're seeing right now.
I could for sure see that being the case because I know that it's way easier to do something for your kids than it is to do it for yourself. Like if there's a problem that they have, of course I'm going to be right on that. Of course I'm going to be helping try to solve it for them. If I have a similar issue, even if they just had a similar issue and now I've got that similar issue, I'm like, that it can wait. It can wait. It can wait. It can wait until it's like, why didn't I take care of this 2 years ago? Kind of thing, for sure. Now you mentioned something earlier about what was it was the procrastination versus priorities. So how can you tell, okay, I am procrastinating this task versus this task is not my priority right now? What's the difference there?
Well, the difference is that you're not avoiding the task that isn't your priority.
Mm.
So really the easiest way, again, and this is all about knowing yourself, knowing, and this is something that I had to learn too. Because in our society we are taught to stuff down our emotions really, really deep down and just ignore them until they bubble up in really unhealthy ways. I mean, that just seems to be the way that they want us to do it. But when you can look at a task and feel totally new, I mean, it's difficult, but you don't necessarily hate it. You don't necessarily love it. It's just something you do and you know you're going to do, and you sort of feel neutral to it. Then that's not procrastination. That's just priorities, because
Mm.
procrastination is definitely tied into some form of discomfort. I mean, what was the running joke? Uh, we were sitting in a bar one day, and the guy says, "Here, let me save you $500,000 in education." And he takes a cocktail napkin out and he writes down pretty much 4 words. And he said, "Yeah," and he said, slaps it on the table and says, "You're welcome." Like, pursuit of pleasure or avoidance of discomfort. And he's like, "You're welcome." Like, okay. So yeah, I mean, if you're procrastinating, um, you're going to know the difference in terms of priority. Just because when you look at the task at hand, you're either completely neutral about it or you don't really have an opinion about it. And in that case, it's that definitely a prioritization thing. Which we can argue, if somebody doesn't want to, um, somebody doesn't want to pay their taxes versus playing video games all day, right? I mean, that's a little bit different because there's different reasons why you wouldn't want to do taxes. But for myself, I don't really put too much stock in it. It's something that I'm pretty neutral about, just because I don't do it. I get somebody else to do it. So if I'm not getting them those papers, it's because I haven't been audited, and it's just not important. So
Mm-hmm.
just doing something else.
Yeah. I, I mean, it definitely, there's also some things that come into play there. I feel like if you're comparing a task like a video game versus taxes, of like there is a draw in video games. You do get, your brain does get some things from the video game that it wouldn't get from the other tasks. So I'm sure that comes into play a little bit. But I want to go a little higher level than we have been, I think, and just generally talk about how procrastination impacts mental health, because I know we're dancing around it a little bit. So let's kind of dig into that. How does procrastination impact mental health?
Well, procrastination it actually has complete polar opposites. So procrastination can be a symptom of depression. Procrastination can be a symptom of anxiety. Procrastination can be a cause, like it's a chicken and egg thing. So it can be a
Mm-hmm.
cause of, you beating yourself up and leading into a depression. Or, procrastination can be a form of, it can lead to anxiety as well. So it's like this chicken and egg thing. They feed each other, right? There's a lot of, again, with labels, we get into labels. I'm not a big fan of labels, but you get into the, oh, why didn't I just do this? I'm lazy, or I can't do it, or or you get into the procrastination, and you now all of a sudden you're anxious about school because you're going to school because you didn't do the homework that was assigned 10 days ago and it's due tomorrow. You know, it's like self fulfilling prophecy. So I mean, or on the flip side of that, procrastination can give you a minor God complex if it all works out in your favor. So, I mean, if you are procrastinating and you've never had negative consequences because of that, you might build yourself up and think you're invincible too. So there's a wide variety of things that it can do. Most commonly, though, you're going to be looking at that spectrum of I'm not going to say self-hating, but definitely, you can get in more limiting the beliefs, and you can also get into this cycle of depression and or anxiety as being unfavorable outcomes to that.
Yeah, yeah. I know that it can be difficult to kind of imagine like how can procrastination give you that God complex kind of thing, but if you procrastinated several things or a kind of group of tasks or something over and over and over and it always works out well, then you're gonna think, oh, this is just the best way to do it. I don't know why everyone doesn't do it this way. This is the right way.
Oh yeah.
But it's not always the most healthy. We were talking ahead of this just about the things that I prioritize at work, and the timing that I do things at work is quite different from what a lot of my coworkers do at work. They do things in a much from kind of a objective look from the outside in, just kind of that like they do things on a very methodic schedule time, and I'm like, I know how long that task is going to take. It's not that long. I don't need to do it yet. And so that worked for me for most of my career. And then I had a crisis happen. And when that crisis happened, my personal priorities were like work went from being way up here to being way on the floor. And all of a sudden my coworkers had to pick up and do the tasks that I was responsible for. And it was one of those things that like at the time I was just like, hey, here's all the stuff. Here's all the stuff. I'm going to go help search for my grandfather. Here's all the stuff that I'm working on. Y'all figure it out. And on the backside of that, though, once I really talked to everyone at work and was like, I'm so sorry that you had to pick up all my stuff, they were just like, yeah, I don't know how you do everything that you do, because I was working on several things at one time. But also, like, it kind of occurred to me that if I had done things in a more methodic fashion, like a lot of other folks do in my job, they wouldn't have had so much of a panic to pick up my work. Even though I left plenty of time for me personally to get things done, it really didn't account for if something happens that changes my priorities, this is going to be a cluster for someone to deal with. And so that really did change the way that I do my work now. I set different internal in my brain deadlines for myself now as a result of that. But it had worked for me until it didn't. It had worked for me just fine until it just didn't anymore. What a good kitty. Can you share a just kind of personal experience of when you maybe struggled with procrastination in your life in general and how you overcame it?
Oh, no, for sure. Just going back to those examples I gave before about looking at the task and then breaking it down into the smallest step possible until you find your kind of your block or your resistance point. So I'll give you a real example. I don't, I don't go to the gym, but I try to go out and I have exercise equipment in my garage, some weights and stuff, and normally it's not an issue for me to go out there. But of course, my daughter gets off school, so I use the excuse that, oh, it's warm outside. I want to spend time with my daughter. I'll go back and start doing that more when when she gets back in school. And so that worked out fine. We had a great summer. And then she went back to school, and then I did started getting up at 5:30, heading into the garage, doing the little routine. It's not even that big a routine. It's like 30 minutes. It's like seriously not much. And what happened was that worked for about a month. I think about a month and a half, almost 2 months. And I started to notice I started dragging my feet, and it just wasn't happening. It's like, okay, hang on, what's going on? So okay, let's break it down. All right, getting up at 5:30 in the morning. I'll do that all the time anyway. It's not a big deal. And then actually doing the exercise. Well, that no, it's not a big deal either. I've been doing that all along too. And going out to the garage, and oh, it had dipped below that magic number I mentioned before, 12 degrees Celsius. 12 degrees Celsius, I think it's like what, 60 something Fahrenheit. Anyway, the temperature dripped down, and that's why I was dragging my feet. So by adding the extra step in the morning of just going out and turning on the heater before I do anything else in the morning, that allowed me to get rid of the reason I was procrastinating.
Yeah. Yeah. Just trying to find that thing. It's 53.6 degrees Fahrenheit. 12 degrees Celsius is 53.6. That's chilly.
Yeah, that's my DGAF temperature.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
unless it's super, like once it gets lower than that, it's like, no.
Yeah. So, what are some just simple, actionable strategies somebody could use if they're procrastinating something? How could they help themselves stop procrastinating?
Right. So I like the big three. So obviously the big three is knowing yourself. Because if you don't know yourself, you don't really know why you do anything. And this is just good practice in general, just to understand why you do things the way you do. And then that way you'll be able to, better plan for things. I'll leave it at that. But the other ways to really go, I really like especially things that we quote unquote have to do. I like us to take back the power. And what I mean by that is that you don't have to do anything. And this is probably one where if you got kids watching, they probably want the parents not to let them watch this one. But you don't have to do anything. Everything in life is a choice. There's literally two things that are not a choice, and that is coming into the world and then leaving it. It's not really a choice either right now. Everything else in between is a choice. So if you switch that I have to, because what happens when we hear that word have to, it's going against our, almost like an attack on our autonomy, right? And you can even try it yourself. If you think to yourself, I have to do something, you can almost feel like that resistance already starting to build up. But if you're choosing to do something, then you're taking that power back, and you'll notice that if you swap your language a little bit to say, I have to do the dishes, to no, I am choosing to do the dishes because, and that because is the second part, which is when your why is high, your cost is low. So if you don't want to procrastinate, you have to know why you're doing things. Because if you don't know why you're doing something, you're going to lose interest in it because it becomes unimportant. If you don't have a reason, if you don't have a reason, there's no reason. So those are the big ones. So definitely changing up the language between have to and get to. So even gratitude, I get to do this, helps you to not have that resentment sometimes that we have with have
Mm,
tos as well, when we feel like we're being forced into things. And so I think those are my favorite ones, especially because they don't take a ton of time or work. It's just
yeah.
flipping one word around. You might have to repeat it to yourself a little bit as you're doing it, depending on what it is. Because I'm not gonna lie, I mean, shoveling shit is still shoveling shit, but like, but if you can flip it around and say, "No, I'm choosing to do this," and I'm assuming if you're doing it, you have a reason.
Yeah.
So I'm choosing to do this because or I get to do this. I have two good hands that allow me to do this. There are other people out there shoveling shit that don't have shovels, or that don't have gloves, or are doing it. At least I have these, and I get to do it in this way.
Yeah. It seems, just kind of on the surface like, oh, I get to do the dishes. That's like I could definitely see, especially if you took that to my kids and said reframe your chore of doing the dishes into something positive. They're going to go, it's not positive. But like, as someone who understands like I get to do the dishes, which means I'll have clean dishes to eat off of and I don't have to get upset that I don't have clean forks. Like that's an easier reframe for some people than I think it will be for others, most definitely. But reframing it into something of gratitude, I think takes it to kind of that next level also of I'm grateful that I can do the dishes using the dishwasher instead of having to hand wash them because I hate hand washing dishes, as I mentioned earlier. So like I get to do. I'm grateful that I can do the dishes using in this way, or I'm grateful that I can fold the laundry and decide what to do with my socks. Because I am a grown ass adult and I can do grown ass adult things in the way that supports me. So yeah, I like the reframe into gratitude. I think that's not something that I've really emphasized myself. I've definitely changed it into this is my routine, this is my habit. When I'm doing laundry, I get to watch my reality TV shows, and so it kind of ties it to that a little bit. And that is something that I haven't really tied it to gratitude, but I think that that would be an easy thing to tie to gratitude. I hadn't thought of that before. Now, I mentioned routines. How do routines and habits help with productivity, and how can someone create ones that stick?
So again, you will want to um, you'll want to know why you're doing things, because when your why is high, your cost is low. So definitely any new routine or any new habit that you want to create, you really want to have a very solid vision in your head of how it's going to help you, or what it's going to do for you, or what it's going to change in your life that is going to make you want to continue on and do that. Um, and then the easiest way when you're trying to start new habits or new routines is to anchor them to things that we're already doing. So, as an example, if you want to start doing affirmations, or you want to start doing some more positive self talk, or maybe you're picking up a course on NLP, non neuro linguistic programming, which I think everybody should do because it is fascinating. But then again, maybe I'm weird. but so what you want to do is tie it into something that you're already always doing anyway, and we call those anchors. So if you always brush your teeth, brushing your teeth is going to be the cue to, while you're sitting in the mirror, you're going to be starting your your self pep talk or whatever. Or maybe you want to do a little bit of exercise every day, but you don't have a lot of time. So and actually, a lot of Instagrammers and TikTokers have said this as well, which I hate referencing because it makes it sound like it's not useful information, but it is. In that when a lot of people drink coffee in the morning, well, if you use a drip coffee maker, it takes about 15 minutes. So while you're making the coffee, if you're just sitting there twiddling your thumbs instead of scrolling your phone, you could do 15 squats or something, or 15 push-ups or whatever, right? So just tying it into something that you already do anchors it in your mind. Now, I do caution with this a little bit, because while you can attach a new habit to, say, smoking a cigarette, um, I wouldn't necessarily do that, because at some point you probably do want to. Well, let me rephrase that. If at some point you do want to quit smoking, you're going to have the negative association then, and so you'll likely
Yeah.
lose the other habit along with the smoking.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about habit stacking here before, and it's definitely one of those like things where you want to tie it to things that are healthy and helpful. Both. I like the coffee tip. I do that if I remember. Now the problem is remembering to do something before coffee is hard sometimes. So for me, I definitely need that little kick of caffeine. But I do like on my second cup of coffee is usually whenever I'm like, okay, I'm going to start doing whatever it is exercise wise that I'm going to do that day, because I break my exercise down into little bitty things throughout the day, because I don't necessarily have an hour in my day to go and work out, but I'm on many Teams calls where I'm not on camera and I can do things while I'm on those Teams calls, as long as I'm not completely out of breath whenever I have to speak, it's fine. So I break mine into little things. And my second cup of coffee for the day is a great time to start that while I'm standing there waiting for it to be ready. Most definitely. Are there any common pitfalls whenever people are trying to build productivity habits?
Oh yeah. The biggest pitfall, honestly, again, I'm gonna beat. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse a little bit, but it is knowing yourself,
Yeah.
knowing your likes, knowing your dislikes, which sounds insane, But I'll be honest with you, like, I didn't even realize all of my own dislikes until I was, like, probably 32, 33.
Mm-hmm.
you know? So, just knowing yourself is one of the biggest pitfalls, because one of the things that happens when we're looking for a solution, and this is in any industry, we go online and we get these cookie cutter systems that, oh, this worked for this person, this worked for this person, this worked for this person. Well, okay, but what kind of person are they? This diet and exercise program helped this guy. Well, yeah, the guy was already into marathon running or something before, so you don't know.
Or it's a guy and
And
you're
everybody
not.
is different. Yeah, yeah, well, and everybody's different, right? So the biggest pitfall that people fall into is, they think that, oh, well, just because it worked for 500,000 other people, it's going to work for me, and it doesn't always do that. I think that's the
Yeah.
biggest one for sure.
It can be really tempting to be like, "Oh, I'm gonna do it this way." You were talking about, "Oh, I get up at 5 a.m. all the time." A routine that starts at 5 a.m. will not work for me, period. Because I am not that person. And I definitely know that about myself. I've known that in particular about myself for a really long time. I guess I really didn't connect the laundry and socks and dishes and not wanting to touch dirty food necessarily until probably my early 30s. That probably took me about the same. So maybe there's something that happens in like your early 30s that really helps you click and know yourself a little bit better. But yeah, just trying to figure out what works for me versus what is supposed to work for me, what should work for me, because it just because it works for someone else, just because I say, oh, it worked for me and I'm not a morning person, that doesn't mean that whatever I do is gonna work for every non-morning person, because that you've got a whole other subset of things that work for you. But
Yeah,
generally, oh,
just
go
go.
ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, just going back to that as an example, like a really visual example. If you've got a mountain in front of you, and you've got a goldfish and a monkey and a mountain goat, and the mountain goat walks up the mountain, the goldfish is going to sit there, and the goldfish is going to sit there, will look at watching the goat, and then the monkey's going to sit there watching the goat, and the monkey is going to start probably walking up the trail like the goat did, and he's not going to have as good and easy a time as the goat, but he's still going to get to the top. And the monkey may even eventually figure out that maybe he can swing through trees or something and get there a little faster, better for him. The goldfish, the poor goldfish, is sitting there. He's like, oh, what the hell? Like, he doesn't have legs. He doesn't have arms. He's not walking anywhere. So he's just going to say, "Oh, I can never do that."
Yeah.
But, you know, lo and behold, there's actually a series of streams that go up the mountain. So, if the goldfish had, maybe seen the mountain goat and said, "Oh, okay, maybe there's another way," then they could go. But if it's just watching the goat and the monkey and what they're doing, just saying, "Oh, there's no way I'm doing that." And that, unfortunately, is the way that most of our products are made. There's 10% of people that it might work really well for. There's 70% that might be able to struggle through it and find their own way, or wheel their way through it. And then you've got the people that are, and again, I'm not it's not to say that these other people who would be in the goldfish group are any less talented. It's just that they just don't have the same tools to do the same job.
Yeah. I I'm glad that you kind of put it that way, because I think a lot of folks who struggle with things like chronic pain or mental health struggles, or even just things like unpredictable energy levels, have a much bigger mountain to climb in general. And maybe there's shouldn't be a mountain to climb. Maybe it should be an ocean to swim. But is there anything that you would say to folks who are trying to find a sustainable productivity practice and and are struggling with some things like chronic pain or mental health struggles or anything like that?
Well, the first and foremost always is self compassion. Have compassion for yourself. Don't beat yourself up about it. Nobody. I think we said this a little bit earlier before the show as well. Nobody can be on 100% of the time.
Yeah.
100%. You can't be 100% on 100% of the time.
Mhm.
And this is, I say this with everybody. I say this with people who are healthy. I say this with people who are maybe not so healthy. The goal is not to go out and do 100 sit-ups. The goal is to go out and do one sit-up. And if you can't do that, the goal is just to go out there and sit.
Yeah.
Just showing up is already, progress enough for, those days. And some days that's what it's going to be. I mean, I've had those days where, just um literally my showing up was me just literally getting one foot out of the bed and then actually just being there.
Yeah.
Wasn't very effective, but I was there. And that's how you develop consistency, and that's how you develop those routines, even if you're going through something else, like a foot surgery, or maybe you've just had a rough bout with some depression or something. um, just knowing that you can celebrate those small wins and that they're actually just showing up. I mean, that's enough. We are human beings. We're not human doings.
Oh, I like that. We are human beings, not human doings. I like that a lot. That's really good. Yeah, I mean, setting a goal for yourself that is not only achievable but easily achievable. Like set a goal of today I'm going to do, like you're talking about sit-ups. Today I'm going to do one sit-up. Okay, great. My 11-year-old, I've been trying to get him to learn how to do an actual push-up. His push-up is like some sort of crab creature trying to do a push-up, and he's in jujitsu and judo. And one of the things I was like, okay, you can't do a push-up. That's no big deal. Like, lean on me. I'm going to put my hands out. You lean on me, and you do a push-up in a form while you're up in the air, and you're just leaning against my hands. And so we're working on like your goal doesn't have to be to do the exact thing that you're ultimately after. Your goal just has to be something that's going to get you a tiny little bit closer. And it's very, I don't think he really is connecting that. Of course, he's 11, so whatever. He just has to do what mom says. And so it's just the very pick something that is super easily achievable, that you can accomplish. And then also, even if you don't accomplish that in a given day, like, don't beat yourself up about it. Just reset. Just reset for the next day, because there are plenty of days that I don't do a single squat. There are plenty of days where I don't do a single anything. There are days I woke up this morning with a headache and I didn't work. So it's like some days you just can't, and that's okay too. And you just gotta kind of be like, all right, I mean, obviously I have the PTO to take off, and I'm grateful that I have the PTO to take off. But, some days you just can't do what you expected to do. I expected this morning to get up and do my work, and I couldn't. So I'm not going to beat myself up about that. I'm just going to reset, and tomorrow I'm going to get up and do my work. And if tomorrow I can't get up and do my work, then I'll have to give myself the grace and space to work that out. But yeah, setting that easily achievable chunk of something, not even the ultimate end goal. That's been really hard for my 11-year-old to understand. For sure. So you're a productivity and procrastination coach. Are there any super creative excuses you've heard from someone about why they procrastinate?
Oh yeah. The biggest excuses I've heard actually wasn't from clients themselves, but it was from family members, or partners or friends of them. So you know how sometimes people have superstitions, and I never really thought of this as something to do with procrastinating. But there was one guy, and I don't follow a lot of sports, but um, I believe it was with the Cubs. He said that he felt that the Cubs were on a losing streak because he was getting his laundry folded at a certain time or something. And so his excuse was he would fold the laundry once the Cubs won, because the last time they won, his clothes were in a dirty heap on the floor, or something like that. Um, that definitely one of the most interesting ones was tied into superstition like that.
Yeah. I've heard of people like, I don't wash this jersey because the last time I washed it, we lost by whatever, that kind of thing. I've heard those sorts of things before. Yeah, that's a little tough to overcome. And also, like, the fate of a sports team does not rest on your shoulders. It's on the players and the coaches and the days that they're having. Maybe it's on their superstitions. Maybe they wash their jersey And that was the problem. What would you say if someone says, I've tried every productivity hack out there, I've tried every productivity tip, and nothing works for me?
Well, the first thing that I'd be going through with them is we would sit down and say, what hasn't worked. But the more important thing is if somebody says that they've tried absolutely everything and nothing works, then we have to look at maybe the reasons why those specific things haven't worked. Because normally what it is they've tried all these different things, but when you boil down the things to their base, to their base values and their base components, they're actually the same thing.
Mm.
So, I had somebody who came to me and they said that they tried every single productivity app that's out there. I'm like, well, okay, no, well, you didn't try everything then, because you know, um, applications, they all work in the same way. They'll look at your day, they'll maybe ask you a few questions and see what's going to be your priorities, and then they'll stick your priorities in any way that looks like it'll work there. But if you don't take into account your energy levels, or what's draining for you versus what energizes you,
Yeah.
which is also very important, then you can stuff the calendar all day. And I can do this. I can stuff my calendar all day long with stuff that I'll never do. I mean, anybody can do that. Um, but yeah, if you're really trying everything and nothing's really working for you, I'd go back and go to the root for sure. Because if nothing is working, then that means that something has to work.
Hmm.
And yeah, I know it's kind of weird how that goes together, right? But if absolutely nothing is working, that means that something does work. It's just that you have to go back to, I guess, the beginning, and figure out why those things aren't working for you. And a lot of the time, it's just that energy component. What's draining, what's an energizer, what's a drainer, what's a block. And like, some people aren't morning people. So I'll give you a quick example. He just purchased this, I think it was Notion or Motion or something, and he spent like $1,500 on upgrades for it, and he did something else, and he said, my days are all filled up, and I just can't get anything done. Well, it was putting all his heaviest tasks right at the first thing in the morning, but the first task he had was something that he identified as being really emotionally taxing and draining.
Mm.
I said, well, if that's there, you're setting yourself up for failure after, because you're going to be totally depleted by the time you're an hour through your day. So it's just kind of counterproductive. So that would be the first thing I would say to those people, is just to really figure out why, and then just go through why it's not working, because we do know, contrary to popular belief, when we say to somebody, "Oh, we don't know why this isn't working," we do. We know why it's not working. We just don't think it's important enough to give ourselves the answer, which is also something really weird, because it's back in the subconscious mind and we have to go digging for it sometimes.
Yeah. I think there's also a lot of conflicting advice out there. Like there's I think it's a Mark Twain quote about, eat your frog first in your day. And it's like, do the most unappetizing task first so it's out of your way. But then there's also the advice of like, no, do the smallest task so you can get something done and then snowball the rest of your day. So I think that works for two different people. Like two different people, one could work great for one person, one could work great for another person. And one could work great for one task for one person, and then the other advice could work great for another task for one person. There's a lot of just conflicting advice. Is there anything you would say to someone who sees that and is like, well, then there's no way to know the right answer?
Well, the way to know the right answer is what works for you. I mean,
Mm.
I think that's what people have sort of forgotten in this age of gurus and masters and experts. And again, I'm not out there to be a guru. I'm not out there to be your master. I'm out there to shine different lights on things and see if some one of those can click. But I'm not going to sit there and say that this is absolutely positively going to work for you. I can say that I know that it's worked for a subset of people. But again, that's why it really comes down to what kind of person you are. At the
Yeah.
very least, you should know: are you a visual person? Are you an auditory person? Are you a tactile person? Um, at the very least, because if you're a very visual person, then things like listening to music while you're doing tasks to try and time yourself isn't probably going to work that well. you know or if you're an auditory person, having a calendar application or a calendar on your wall with 10,000 different colors and different things is probably not going to help you too much. you know so again, it's just all about knowing yourself and how you operate.
Yeah. My ex was really into bullet journals, and I don't. If you're not familiar with bullet journals, it's a specific method of like timing out your day and all of this different stuff. And he was insistent that I needed to do it also, and I was just like, "That's not going to work for me. I'm sorry." And I was right. I tried it, and it didn't. It didn't work for me. It wasn't. I'm not a journaling person. I've never been a journaling person. I put everything into my phone app because it sends me reminders. And I need those reminders so I stay on task. And a bullet journal is a written thing that you're just going to write down. I'm sure there's an app now. This was a long time ago. I'm sure there's an app now for it, but it's not going to send me a reminder that I have lunch with my friend on this weekend or whatever. So, yeah, but it worked great for him. It worked very well for him. I have no idea if he's still doing it, but yeah, you got to know yourself, and you got to know what's going to be helpful for you for sure. Bite Mark has a great question. She would like to know, what is your favorite poem?
Oh, I got this one beaten into me in the ninth grade. Invictus.
Okay.
I forget where it came from, but yeah, I mean, we were well, I guess we could say we were forced to learn it, memorize it. I don't know what the point would be, but I think it's a good poem. Out of the night that covers me, dark as the pit from pole to pole. I think whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced or cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody yet unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishment the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.
Very resilience
Invictus.
based.
Yeah, and I never really figured out why I managed to memorize it. Um, because I mean, going down to memorization of different things, like I absolutely hated the class too. So like I was a bit of a dick.
Yeah.
No, no, true story. Like he was not a good person. He was hurting though. I mean,
Mm.
have to go back and give that compassion thing and just look at it that way. So he was a hurt person that hurt a lot of people.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
it was.
You have a more kind. Yeah, I had a couple of teachers that were real dicks, and I don't look back at them and go, I'm sure they were hurting in some way. I look back and go, God, what was he doing in a classroom? But,
That's fair too.
yeah. What is your favorite life hack?
My favorite life hack actually is figuring out how to be curious about things, because one of the things that we run into is we run into boredom a lot, because we are in an overstimulated world, right? So I have this discussion with my daughter all the time too, 'cause she says she's bored at school, or that that's boring, or this is boring. Well, boredom is just your brain telling you that something is not important, or that you already know everything you need to know about said subject and therefore it's not important. So, one of the easiest ways to kind of pull yourself out of that is whenever you start to feel bored, just say, "What am I missing?" Because I guarantee you can pick up anything. You can pick any object, you can pick any topic, and the guaranteed you do not know 100% about it. And as soon as you just flip that question, the brain is it's very useful in giving us all these anxieties and all these future woe or doom and gloom images, but it's good at solving problems. And so if you say, what am I missing, you're giving it a problem to solve, and so it'll start working. And therefore, I mean, it's not going to it's not going to turn conveyor belts into the most exciting thing in the world for you, but you're going to be able to stay awake and pay attention, and it's not going to be as unbearable as if you're just sitting there saying, oh, conveyor belts.
I love that question. What am I missing? What do I not know about this yet? What more could I learn? Especially in things like school. I'm not in school, but my kids both are, and they've had those like I'm really bored in this class kinds of moments, and that's a piece of advice I can parrot back to them and say, okay, well, what do you not know about Beowulf or whatever it is you're learning about right now? Oh, that's a good one. Well, it is time for our magic moment. Let me see if I can get my magic wand working. Sometimes I hit it and it starts working like 5 minutes later. I should have hit it earlier. That's okay. If you had a magic wand and you could wave it and eliminate one common misconception or opinion about mental health, mental illness, disabilities, what would it be?
I would get rid of the stigma around just if for whatever reason you've struggled with a mental illness or disability, or you wanted or you needed to talk to somebody, that you automatically are weak. Um, I'd like to get rid of that stigma for sure. I'd waive that. I mean, I've been to therapy. I've been to coaches. You know, all therapists go to therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Not sure how that argument is going to help some people, but they do. But I mean, the greatest leaders in the world, they all had advisors. They all had almost all of them went to therapy at one point or another, um, or had coaches. So I mean, yeah, that is definitely the one thing that I would try to. I just wave my hand and get away. Is that just because you had a bad day and you feel like that you want to talk to somebody doesn't automatically mean you're weak and you can't handle it.
Absolutely. It's been a while since we talked about this also, but if you go to therapy and you're like, oh shit, therapy really sucks and I hate it, get a different therapist. Try someone else. Because I had that experience. My first experience with therapy was absolutely atrocious. And I didn't know what I didn't know at that time. This was a very long time ago. But I didn't know that not all therapy was like that. And I just got a bad therapist. And so it was many years before I tried again. And I am so grateful that I did go back to therapy and try again, because at that point it was life changing. And it was just a different person. It was just another person. And all therapists are just people. So yeah, for sure. For sure. If you need help, go get help. There are people out there who are absolutely willing to help you. 488 says, I like your bracelets, Chris.
Actually, those were made by my daughter. Rainbow.
Rainbow loom. I recognize that.
I
Yep. Yep.
guess, yeah.
Yeah. The little loom, everything. I like those. We had it was a couple of years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago now. But I used to find those little plastic or the little elastics everywhere, everywhere all the time. I'm sure it'll come back around and they'll start working on those again. But excellent work by her, most definitely. Yeah, tell her we said that she did a great job on those for sure.
Certainly will.
Well, folks who are here in the chat, if you have any additional questions for Chris, feel free to pop them into the chat. And then while you're doing that, Chris, I will post your socials one more time and the link to your website one more time. And I'll just open it up to you. If there's anything that we didn't cover or any resources you want to point out or anything like that, I will just give you the floor for a little bit. Anything you want to promote?
No, I think that the only thing I really want to promote is that, again, if and it's not just procrastination. It's it can be depression or anxiety or whatever. You know, you don't need to be fixed. Okay, you're not broken. Um, you are operating in the way that you were programmed to operate in, and because the brain is like a computer and it's like programming, it can be changed. So I just want people to know that you're not broken, and you don't need to be fixed. You might have some things that aren't serving you fully, but they aren't there to hurt you on purpose. They're actually there to help protect you. And they kind of are in a way, but when they start to get in the way a little bit, then, don't don't be afraid, or, you know, I guess fear going out and reaching out to, a therapist, coach, or, mentor or friend, or anybody really.
Yeah. And I'll throw out there one more time that Chris is offering a free session. So if you are listening to this right now and you've liked what you've heard, feel free to check out the Discord. Let me post the Discord link one more time. Feel free to check that out in the Discord. If you are listening to this later, then you will see that link down in the description of the podcast, and it'll be up on my website and all of that. So feel free to take advantage of that. And Chris, I definitely appreciate you offering everybody an opportunity to meet with you one-on-one and just see how they can get a little bit of help, a little bit of support. All right, well, folks, stick around for just a minute. And Chris, thank you so much for taking the time out. I appreciate you spending your evening with us, most definitely.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for listening.
Absolutely. Okay, y'all, give me just a second to disconnect with Chris. I will be right back. Don't go anywhere.